Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. One of the final sessions of the annual meeting 2022 on one of the most important topics here for all of us, as well as for our online audience. And joining me today is a fantastic panel that can hopefully help us all develop, having listened to all of these conversations over the last 4 days, help us all develop a better picture of what the global jobs outlook will be. I am joined by, immediately to my left, Nicholas Schmidt, Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights at the European Commission. Welcome.
Thank you.
To the far end of the panel, Ayman Ezzat, Chief Executive Officer of Capgemini from France. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next to him, Hisayuki Idekoba, President, Chief Executive Officer, and Representative Director of the Board for Holdings Japan. Welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, last but not least, Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, Minister of Budget, Planning, Finance, Budget, and National Planning of Nigeria. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start with a very quick poll in our audience. How many of you think that unemployment will rise globally in this coming year? I would say that's about 2/3 of the room. How many of you think that real wages will rise over the coming year? Maybe 2 or 3 hands. That's less than 5% of the room, perhaps 10% of the room. And I think that's among the issues that we will try to discuss today. One, are we going to have enough jobs? What are the types of disruptions that will take place in this coming year, but also a longer-term outlook? And are these going to be good jobs? Are these going to be meaningful jobs? And are they going to pay people well enough, especially in the midst of an rising inflation and a cost of living crisis? With that, I will begin our conversation with perhaps just a quick thought on what you've seen in terms of the results of our very quick in-person polling, as well as some specific views. And I'm going to turn to you first, Mr. Idekoba, because you have global data on the labor market. Where do you think things are headed?
Yeah, it seems people are thinking, high unemployment ratio. Of course, there will be good time and a bad time in terms of economy. We Recruit is a global tech company which we are serving more than 300 million users, job seekers every month through our services like Indeed.com or Glassdoor. And what we are seeing is there's 3 challenges, especially actually supply side. Number 1 is aging workforce. And number 2 is the rapid change of attitude towards work-life balance. And the number 3 is change of immigration and migration. And the first thing, for example, in between 2000 and 2010, in OECD countries, we saw increase of percentage of working age population. But 2010 to 2020, we saw 2% dip of working age population. And when we think about next, 2020 to 2030, we will see 3.3% of working population dip. So when we think about unemployment ratio, 3.3% is actually a big impact. And it will affect the changes of atmosphere of the workforce and environment, everything. And in the US, 1/4 of workers are over 55. And the second, so the change of attitude towards the work-life balance. Now, compared with before COVID, in the US, for example, we're getting like more than 3 times of job postings are having some kind of remote work options. But job seekers are searching 5 times more about remote work job. people love flexibility and remote work. So the attitude toward work-life balance, especially younger generation, has been changing rapidly. It is very difficult to fill healthcare workers positions or construction worker positions. And third, changes of immigration and migration. For example, in the US, we had 2015, US had more than 1 million immigration surplus, even before COVID-19. 2019, US had 470,000 immigration surplus, and 2021, it was 270,000 surplus. Not only in the US, UK, Australia, developed, most of developed countries are having less immigration. That is also very challenging. And to solve these situations, I think it's going to be very important we have greater collaboration between technology and people. Technology can unlock people's potential. That's why we think it's going to be important to make it easier to help people to transition jobs of today to jobs of tomorrow. For example, 70% of US jobs are requiring some kind of mid to high level digital skill, even today. There will be more requirement from employers. Technology will keep disrupting the industry. So even today, our research showed it takes roughly 15 weeks to get a new job. And OECD research showed if people cannot have income for 12 weeks, 40% people will fall below the poverty line. So it is crucially important to simplify hiring, to support people to get a job faster and easier. We are thinking.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Minister Ahmed, let me turn to you next. How does the jobs outlook look in Nigeria, and in particular this balance between what we all consider to be the jobs of today versus some of the highest growing jobs of tomorrow? What does that balance look like?
Well, in Nigeria, we do have, as a matter of fact, a very high unemployment rate. With a 210 million population, 60% of that population is about 35 years and below. And what we're grappling with now is how to reskill our tools, because our education system is basically designed for just academics and routine white-collar jobs. So we are, of course, now because of this, the demographics, we have a lot of youths taking advantage of the ICT tools, the digital economy, and creating jobs for themselves. So what we're seeing is more jobs being created now by small entrepreneurs that are using IT systems. Some of these IT systems like Flutterwave, Jumia are today one of the largest employers of labor, and also they report very high volumes of incomes that they create. We have, as a result of the unemployment, we also have a very high level of poverty. So our government has designed a program focused towards reducing poverty by creating growth-enabling jobs. For example, when we had the COVID, we designed an economic sustainability plan that was targeted at mass agricultural production, putting into use about 20,000 to 100,000 hectares of land to just put people to work. We created different kinds of jobs that enables people to use their hands to work despite the restrictions. We also identified micro, small, medium enterprises and gave them payroll support so that they retain the jobs that they have and also are able to stay stable and perhaps create new jobs. There are a lot of schemes that are designed with the focus on developing the digital economy. The ICT sector in Nigeria is today one of the largest growing sectors in the country, and it's helping to create more jobs, especially for this large youth population that we have. So we see the potential to do more. It's still a very long way off, but we're seeing between 2020 and 2021, 9 million new jobs were created. But we have more students graduating out of school than the number of jobs that we create. And we realize that the only way we can even up and do more is actually using the digital economy. We have a lot of youths now doing jobs, outsourced jobs, serving other economies around the world, working from home. We have organizations that have closed physical offices during the COVID, but still are working virtually. So there's more of, like my colleague in the panel has said, an improved work-life balance. And a lot of people are used to this new style of work and really want it to stay on. Even government is working in a hybrid manner. We have people staggered coming to work in phases, and the people that are at home work from home. And we saw an increase in productivity in government work during the COVID, higher than before the COVID. It was very strange. We didn't need to have all the people that we had to work, because only one quota of the workforce was allowed to come and stay and work in the offices. From the middle to the lower cadre were at home for almost 12 months. The ones that needed to work were working virtually. So we continuously track the processes. We have Google recently bringing into Nigeria and a submarine cable that is going to enhance the speed of our internet connection. So it will enable more of these youths to work virtually and also create their own businesses that they can run and employ people.
Thank you very much. Very helpful, and I think giving us a good picture of sort of advanced economies as well as what is happening in emerging markets. The experience that you shared comes through in a lot of the data in other developing and emerging markets as well. Commissioner Schmidt, could I turn to you next? What are some of the trends that you're seeing in Europe, and also how is the deal part of the European Green Deal helping workers through this technological transition, the green transition, and a lot of the social polarization that we currently see?
Yes. First, I would say that we are in a globalized world, but the problems are quite different. And what we hear now from our friends from Africa, we hear the same approaches in Northern Africa and other places in the world. So I think Europe, Japan, and also the US are in a different world in relation to jobs and employment, because of mainly of demographics being one of the main issue. Now, what is the trend in Europe? We have seen after the pandemic, which was really a very heavy recession, even heavier than the previous one during the financial crisis, we had a very strong, bold recovery. And especially the labor market recovered also quite rapidly. Now there is uncertainty due to the war. We have a new forecast which show that the recovery is losing some steam, but the labor market forecasts are still good. And I think there is a mixture of also demographics and what you said about the aging working population, people moving out of the labor market, but also it seems a very strong hiring tendency among companies, because companies are in a process of change, technological change, you have mentioned it, digitalization, And finally, we noticed that what we feared, that the digital revolution prepared some kind of a world without work. This is not really the scenario which will happen. So we see that digitalization certainly destroys a lot of jobs, but at the same time creates a lot of new jobs. But the new jobs are quite different from those disappearing. So I think this is the major challenge, how we can organize this transition, how we can skill, reskill, upskill, how we can also better organize our education system to the new challenges of the labor market and the skills needed on the labor market. This is a big issue. Now, we have launched this big program of the Green Deal and especially also a big investment program, 750 billion. Europe has, which is mainly focused on promoting the Green Deal, the change because of climate change, and digitalization, focusing on investment in big companies, but also in smaller companies, mainly smaller companies, because the digital challenges among SMEs. How can we really push SMEs to? And there's one issue I liked also it's entrepreneurship, how we can also foster entrepreneurship. How because digital opens a lot of new possibilities in that frame. So I think the prospects for Europe are positive, unless I always say the uncertainty will become much bigger and we are heading for a real catastrophe, which never can be excluded. But in the present juncture, I would say the labor market are quite strong, quite solid, but there are a lot of challenges on the labor market linked to the changes in the type of jobs which we will have, and this change is going extremely fast. So I think this is a responsibility for public sector. It's a responsibility also for companies to invest a lot of money into reskilling and upskilling. And I think if we can do that, well, there is the employment issue for Europe is not are quite good.
Thank you very much. You pointed out in the beginning that a few years ago we would all have been talking about the robot revolution and automation and digitalization replacing a lot of jobs. And I think what we've seen happen is very much this augmentation, but not without a reskilling revolution, which has been very much front and center here at the meeting. Mr. Ezzat, you are very much in the present of jobs that we normally describe as the future of jobs. So please tell us more about your workforce and how you've done some of those adaptations.
So if you look at our business, right, so we're in the technology consulting business, so we help our clients actually move to the digital economy, right? That's our business. And we are made of talent. 70% of our course is talent. So for us, that's the main input to be able to do our work. What we have seen is a massive increase in terms of demand over the last 24 months. You know, actually, all the COVID situation fueled and accelerated all the demand for digitalization. And we have to realize when we talk about things like electric vehicles, that's digital. When we talk about energy transition, we are in digital. When we talk about moving to a sustainable economy, all this is driven by digitalization. It's not just about automating processes. It's really about creating new platforms, new businesses, which are all digital. That has increased the demand for technology skills massively. And what we see today is a massive imbalance between supply and demand, right? And it has several things. First, when you talk about increase in terms of purchasing power, I can promise you our employees do have an increase in terms of purchasing power because the cost increase in terms of compensation are absolutely phenomenal, right? And we compete with the technology firm, we compete with our clients, we compete with startups, we compete with everybody for these skills. So that's the first thing. Second thing, a lot of projects are being put on hold. So as moving to a digital economy is one of the future drivers of economic growth, we're actually not having enough skills. We are slowing down that transition. Just to give you an idea about numbers, we have increased our workforce by 55,000 people globally in the last 12 months. Okay? We hired more than 100,000 people to be able to do that because people leave as well because of the attrition. So we're feeding the digital economy. But it is not enough. We still have more demand. We let things go by because we just cannot pursue them. So this is just to give an idea about the significant imbalance that there is today in this and the importance to be able to build the skills to be able to feed the future economic growth. Now, the solutions. One, there needs to be a lot more upskilling and training. There is not enough. Actually, companies are not investing enough. I mean, some companies do. You know, there's a big US telco that committed $1 billion to reskilling half of its workforce. There is a big aerospace company in Europe, for example, taking 600 people that have no technology background and training them over 6 months in technology skills, in data. And we have to get out of the idea that technology requires engineering degrees. We will not have enough supply of engineers to be able to feed the economy. We need to create short cursuses of 2 years, you know, like the apprenticeship model of the Industrial Revolution. You know, like we had in Germany for manufacturing, you need the same thing. You need software engineers, you need data specialists, you need cyber specialists, you need cloud, you need connectivity. These people can be trained in 2 years. Today, we cannot find enough people with a technology background. So we're picking up people, assessing them on basic skills and training them. And we have to do a lot more of that, you know, and we have to work. There needs to be a lot more public-private, you know, collaboration on that because we need, you know, in Netherlands they have a very good thing where the private companies are involved in helping define the cursuses, you know, for education, and actually they sit on the boards to validate these cursuses to be able to create actually these new skills. We have to do a lot more of that. There needs to be a massive reskilling of digital economy. I know we have that number to get to 20 million, you know, digital employees by 2030. I promise you it is not enough to be able to feed the digital economy. We need a lot more. The second thing, which I think is important, is companies have to think differently. They have to think differently about talent. You have to think about how do I get the talent to get the work done, not how do I hire the people to get the work done. Because some people, as we said, want to work 100% remote. Some people will never work for us. They don't want to work for a 340,000 people organization, but they're interested in some projects. So how do I create a talent ecosystem that includes my employees, but other potential gig workers, potentially people who have retired, students, people that I identify associated with me, that will come work with me on a project, on a special assignment, but will never be my employees. So companies have also, even governments, have to think differently about how to get the work done, how do we build a talent ecosystem, and not how do we hire people to get the work done. Because people want a much more flexible environment. The workforce has become much more fluid. We'll never go back to what it is before. Attrition rates in companies will increase because people will move much faster from a company to another, from a project to another, because they don't want to have a career, you know, for 5 years and being told this is how your career want to look like. They want to say, I don't want to be told that. I want to decide what my future is going to look like. Right? And that's the new generation we have to deal with. So we need to create a much more flexible work environment, hybrid work environment, have a lot more empathy, caring for people, less direction and telling them what to do, more enabling them. It's a complete evolution as well in terms of leadership approach, you know, to be able to get this, also keep this workforce, which has completely changed, you know, in the last 10 years. And that's what we see today as being some of the challenges we have to deal with.
Thank you so much. Very diverse perspectives in terms of what the jobs outlook and trends will be, but I think a lot of commonality in terms of the red threads around skills, the red threads around the agency of people and the type of work that they want to do, and the importance of digital and connectivity. We have a little bit of time for questions from the audience. Please say your name, your organization, and please keep your question brief. Over to you.
Yeah. My name is Jira.
Just please wait for the mic. Thank you.
My name is Jira, I'm a global shaper from the Bern Hub. My question is very specifically, how would you see the universal basic income, specifically this, like as one of the steps to make sure that nobody is under poverty? while you can implement the upskilling that all of you had been mentioning?
And is your question directed to someone in particular?
No, I think so. All of you mentioned the problem of upskilling, so therefore,
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one of you would like
Yeah,
to?
I mean, I can start. I mean, there is something very important today which wasn't available before. We have unlimited amount of training capacity. Okay? We hired tens and tens of thousands of people during the pandemic that we don't know. We onboarded them, we trained them, we deployed them on project. We were running at 97% work from home. Okay? So can we train people? Yes. Can we make digital inclusion work? Yes. So we can bring a lot more people in the workforce, and a lot more people working remotely. We just need to be able to be connected, you know, and to identify you. Once we do that, I can train you. If you have the basic skills, if I assess you have the basic skills, I can train anybody, anywhere in the world. I mean, we have completely unlocked the idea about borders. You know, before we'd had a project in Sweden, we need to have people in Sweden, okay? Or they're working from India. But this was kind of the duality. Today, during the pandemic, we didn't care. We had people sitting in the Netherlands working on projects in Sweden, people sitting in Germany working properly in France. So the geographic location is completely unlocked for a lot of these jobs. And we have to take advantage of that, and we can train a lot of people. So the connectivity and bringing to people connectivity is the most important things to be able to deal with some of these issues and take people out of poverty and train them on some of these new skills and give them jobs.
That's fascinating. Can I just ask you one quick follow-up question? There's been so much conversation about globalization, deglobalization here when it comes to trade in particular. I mean, is your view that we're going towards a very globalized digital labor market?
It is definitely, because today we have, so we need to be able to recruit people. We need some physical locations for people, but we're opening in many places and we're hiring everywhere. The beauty of work from home is remote work, is not work from home, okay? So I don't care where people are. We have to be careful around certain things. Some clients will not ask us not to work from some countries, etc. So that we have to deal with some of these constraints. But today, when I accept people to work 100% remote, I don't care where they live in France or in Germany. I don't care in which city, if they live in a village or they live in a big town. So part of my population, we cannot deal only with remote workers 100%, but part of our employees are going to be 100% remote workers. And that unlocks plenty of places. It helps deal with territorial issues. It helps deal with how can you keep people in villages. So there's plenty of positive things that are coming from work from home that people don't realize that are very important to consider for the future.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to come in on
I just wanted to add that this is truly where we are right now is a world without borders. In terms of jobs, people stay in any part of the world and work in other parts of the world. You don't need visas, you don't need work permits. All you need is your computer and you're at work.
Thank you.
Just a word on the universal income. That's the question. Well, I think that the idea of a universal income to everybody, and then those who want to work or can work will work, and others have to live on universal. I'm not convinced by that. But what I think is that we have, because the life cycle of work is changing, because people moving from being an employee to being self-employed, passing through transitions where they have to reskill, and so on. So we have to make sure that these transitions, people are in some secure situation. So if I am in a process of being reskilled because my job has been has disappeared or has fundamentally changed, I have to be sure that I have an income. So this is not a universal income, but there has to be a situation where people have an income during this whole professional cycle they are going through. So I think we have to redesigning our also not only the world of work, but also the world of social benefits. For me, this does not mean unemployment benefits. Finally, we should get rid of this idea of unemployment. People should be in a transition where they are reskilled, and also during this period to get an income they can have a decent life of. Saying, well, you get the income and then I take care of yourself, I'm not interested. This would discourage finally a part of people perhaps, because there are studies which were made in Finland, for instance, to say, well, I can also live without. So I think this is a societal issue of high importance.
Thank you.